Welcome in. It is great to have you here for another deep dive
Yeah, really glad to be doing this one.
because today we have a very specific mission. We are going to cut straight through the massive cloud of hype surrounding the artificial intelligence revolution right now.
Which is everywhere. You hear about it constantly.
Exactly. I mean, it feels like every single day there is a new breakthrough, right?
Yeah.
A new foundational model or, some startup promising to completely automate your entire workflow.
Right.
But our goal today is to uncover the massive, entirely hidden roadblock that is secretly keeping enterprise tech executives awake at night.
It really is the critical failure point, and it's one that no one outside the C-suite seems to be acknowledging.
Yeah.
Everyone is looking at the shiny front-end capabilities, the chatbots and the generators, but they're completely ignoring the crumbling foundation underneath.
And to get to the bottom of this, we're looking at one primary source today. It's a brand new, incredibly eye-opening 2026 ZDNET article. It's written by Vala Afshar.
It's a fantastic breakdown.
It really is. This article breaks down a massive joint survey. This was conducted by Informatica, Wakefield Research, and Deloitte. And they didn't just poll, random tech enthusiasts.
No, they went straight to the top.
Right. They gathered insights from 600 chief data officers. These are the executives whose entire job is to architect and protect the lifeblood of modern massive companies. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
You might think the future of AI is all about who has the smartest algorithms,
Right.
or the most processing power, or the flashiest interface.
Which is what all the marketing tells you.
Exactly. But the executives actually running the show, they say it comes down to something much less glamorous.
Much less.
It comes down to trusting your data and the terrifying reality that most employees out there might not actually know what good data even looks like.
Which is exactly why this deep dive matters so much for you listening right now.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter if you are prepping for a high-stakes board meeting or leading a specialized team or just trying to navigate your own daily AI tools to get your work done faster.
Right.
Understanding this concept, what we can call the enterprise data trust gap, that is essentially your shortcut to being the most informed person in the room.
Absolutely.
Because while everyone else is distracted by what the AI is hypothetically capable of doing, you will understand the underlying architectural foundation that determines whether it is actually doing it correctly.
So let's set the scene here and look at the trajectory. Because the enterprise growth we're talking about it's nothing short of explosive.
Oh, totally unprecedented.
We aren't talking about small startups experimenting in a garage. This survey looked at large enterprises. We're talking over $500 million in revenue.
The big players.
Right. And instead of a slow crawl, we've seen a massive spike. Nearly 69% of these large enterprises are actively using generative AI now.
69%.
Yeah. And that is up from 48% in 2025 and just 35% in 2024. It is a massive acceleration curve.
But the volume of adoption isn't even the most crucial takeaway here.
Yeah.
No, it is the fundamental nature of the shift in how the technology is being applied. We have moved decisively past the era of the simple, reactive chatbot.
Thank goodness.
Right. The enterprise world is now fully pivoting to what is known as Agentic AI.
Okay, so for anyone who hasn't been deep in the trenches of that specific term yet, let's draw a clear line. A traditional generative AI is something you prompt. You ask it to write an email. It writes the email and it stops.
It waits for the next command.
Exactly. But Agentic AI is an entirely different beast. It operates autonomously.
Yes.
It doesn't just draft the email. It reads an incoming customer complaint, decides a refund is necessary, accesses your secure payment gateway, issues the refund, and updates the CRM software, all without a human ever clicking a button.
It operates with a predefined degree of agency. It pursues goals on its own. And the numbers back up how desperately companies want this capability.
Right.
Nearly 47% of the companies surveyed have already deployed agentic AI in some capacity. And if you look at just the large companies, it's 54%.
Wow.
And almost a third more are planning to do so in the next 12 months. This isn't a futuristic concept anymore. It is happening at a blistering pace right now.
And they are doing this because they are looking for an across-the-board operational overhaul.
Right. Absolutely.
The survey points out they want enhanced customer experiences. I think there's 29% of them. Radically improved business intelligence and decision-making at 28%.
Right. And 27% said ironclad regulatory compliance.
And vastly better employee workflows at 26%. They're basically expecting these autonomous agents to completely revolutionize the speed of business.
That is the expectation, yes. The promise is a frictionless, highly efficient corporate machine where mundane, complex, and high-volume tasks are handled instantly by autonomous agents.
Okay, but, and here is the big but, if the adoption curve is essentially a vertical line, and the promised operational benefits are this massive, why isn't every Fortune 500 company running on complete autopilot right now?
That is the million-dollar question.
What is the friction preventing these massive organizations from just flipping the switch and letting the agents take over?
The friction is the data itself.
The data.
Yes, the survey reveals a massive stubborn barrier that halts these ambitions entirely. Exactly 50% of the adopters cite data quality and retrieval as their absolute biggest deployment hurdle.
50%.
Half of them. It is not a limitation of the large language models or the processing compute power. It is the raw material feeding the models.
Wait, but if the executives know the data is essentially a minefield, how are they justifying pushing forward with adoption at this 69% rate? Aren't they just setting themselves up for a massive operational failure at scale?
That is precisely the paradox keeping them awake at night. Because it is one thing to run a highly controlled pilot program, right? Where a team of data scientists meticulously cleans a single data set for one AI agent to use.
In a sandbox.
Exactly. It is an entirely different reality to deploy that agent company-wide and let it pull from the chaotic, messy, decentralized reality of a legacy enterprise data environment.
Which is what most of these older companies have.
Exactly. And the survey shows over 57% of these data leaders explicitly view data reliability as the single key barrier stopping them from moving these AI projects out of controlled pilots and into live production.
So they just don't trust it.
They simply do not trust the reliability of their own company's data enough to let an autonomous AI run wild with it.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. You have these chief data officers tapping the brakes because they know the underlying data infrastructure is incredibly messy.
Right.
But then the survey highlights this bizarre, almost comical contradiction.
Oh, this part is fascinating.
Despite data quality being a massive, acknowledged roadblock at the executive level, 65% of data leaders say their everyday employees fully trust the data they are using for AI.
That is a staggering disconnect between the architects of the system and the daily users of the system.
It gets even wilder. For the companies that are actively using Agentic AI, those autonomous tools we just talked about, that blind faith from the workforce actually goes up.
Up to what, 74%?
Yes, 74% of leaders say most or all of their organization completely trusts the data being used for their AI efforts. So the top executives are terrified of the data quality, but 3/4 of the employees think the data is perfectly fine.
This raises an important question for anyone paying attention. Should we actually be terrified by this high level of trust?
I mean, normally you'd want trust, right?
Exactly. In traditional management theory, high trust in an organization's tools is a metric you celebrate. It usually indicates a healthy, efficient culture.
Yeah.
But in this specific context, dealing with autonomous AI, that high trust might actually be the biggest red flag of all.
Wow.
And the survey reveals the other side of the coin that explains exactly why this is happening. 75% of these chief data officers state that their workforce urgently needs upskilling in data literacy.
You have 75%.
Yes. And another 74% say their workforce urgently needs upskilling in AI literacy just to use these tools responsibly.
So let's synthesize that aha moment for everyone listening. The employees aren't trusting the AI because the data is perfectly clean and reliable.
No.
They are trusting the AI because they literally lack the data literacy to recognize poor quality, outdated, or fundamentally flawed data.
Exactly.
It is a textbook case of the Dunning-Kruger effect, just amplified by technology. They don't know what they don't know.
It is a highly dangerous illusion of competence. We are dealing with a phenomenon known in the tech and aviation industries as automation bias.
Automation bias.
Right. When a complex system outputs a beautifully formatted, highly confident, grammatically perfect answer, the human reviewer's critical thinking naturally downshifts.
I just believe it.
We tend to defer to the machine, assuming that the sophistication of the presentation equates to the accuracy of the underlying information.
So, to put this in a real-world context for you, listening right now, imagine a mid-level financial analyst. They use an autonomous AI agent to reconcile a massive quarterly report.
Okay.
The AI agent goes out, pulls data from various company databases, and generates a stunning, highly detailed summary of revenue trends. The analyst reads it, it sounds incredibly authoritative, the charts look flawless, and they approve it for the board.
Exactly. But what the analysts didn't realize, because they lacked the deep data literacy to audit the AI's retrieval process, is that the AI agent pulled pricing metrics from a deprecated, outdated legacy database that hasn't been updated in 3 years. The AI didn't know any better. It just found a table labeled pricing and used it. The system generated a hallucination based on a fundamental data flaw.
And because the output looks so polished, the analyst just rubber-stamped it.
Right.
That feeling of, well, the computer generated this complex analysis in 3 seconds, so it must be right. That is exactly the trap these top enterprise leaders are trying to prevent.
Because the stakes are so high.
Right. When an autonomous agent is making financial decisions, managing supply chains, or handling massive customer data sets, that blind, unverified trust becomes a massive corporate liability.
Which perfectly explains why the enterprise environment feels a bit like the Wild West right now.
It really does.
The capabilities of the technology have vastly outpaced the institutional guardrails. The survey points out a truly staggering statistic. 76% of data leaders admit that their company's visibility and governance have simply not kept pace with how fast their own employees are already adopting and using AI.
Let's pause on that for a second. 3/4 of these massive multi-million-dollar companies are basically admitting they have lost track of how their own people are utilizing these autonomous tools.
Yes.
That sounds like an absolute nightmare for anyone in charge of corporate security.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it paints a very clear narrative of the enterprise technology lifecycle over the last few years.
How so?
Well, the broad consensus is that 2024 and 2025 were the major turning points for rapid, somewhat chaotic adoption. Departments were bringing tools in shadow IT style, experimenting, and just seeing what was possible.
Right. It's playing around.
But 2026, according to these 600 data leaders, is officially the year of scaling. They want to take those successful, isolated pilots and roll them out enterprise-wide to actually capture the promised return on investment.
But you cannot scale chaos.
No, you can't.
Scaling an autonomous technology requires robust, airtight governance. And building that kind of infrastructure requires very heavy intentional investment.
Massive investment.
And if you want to know what is actually happening behind closed doors in the enterprise world, you always follow the money. So let's look at where these chief data officers are opening their wallets right now.
See it.
A massive 86% of them plan to significantly increase their data management investments across 2026 and 2027. It is almost universally their top budgetary priority.
Because they finally realize they have to fix the plumbing before they can install the fancy new fixtures.
Exactly. They are heavily prioritizing data privacy and security. That was 43%. Improving data and AI governance was at 41%.
Right.
And right alongside that structural investment, they are dumping massive amounts of capital into upskilling their workforce. 39% are prioritizing tackling that critical data and AI literacy gap.
They are literally paying to train their employees to stop trusting the AI so blindly.
Yeah.
They are trying to manufacture data literacy at scale.
But the strategic challenge they face right now is a tooling dilemma.
Right.
How exactly do you build this new, robust layer of AI governance over a legacy data infrastructure?
That is the hard part.
The survey found that nearly half of data leaders are currently just trying to adapt their existing data governance tools for AI. Meanwhile, about 30% are investing in entirely discrete, specialized AI tools.
Right.
And roughly 22% are trying to develop completely new proprietary governance frameworks from scratch.
So they're split on how to fix it.
Is there any clear consensus on which approach is actually working? Because building from scratch sounds incredibly expensive and slow. But adapting legacy tools sounds like trying to fit a square peg into a very complex, autonomous round hole.
There is actually a fascinating correlation revealed in the data. The companies that are simply expanding their existing governance frameworks are actually much further along in their AI journey. Yes. 75% of that group has already successfully adopted generative AI into their workflows. Compare that to the 22% of companies trying to develop entirely new tools from scratch. Only 65% of them have managed to adopt it.
That makes a lot of practical sense, though. It is like using the seatbelts you already have installed, instead of trying to invent a completely new concept of vehicle safety while the car is already driving down the highway at 100 miles an hour.
That's a great way to put it.
Leaning on established data access controls and data lineage trackers and simply applying them to the new AI pipelines, that allows for much faster and more secure deployment.
It does. But even when utilizing existing tools, fixing these deep-rooted data architecture problems is turning into a logistical nightmare.
Why is that?
Because it is crucial to understand that a chief data officer cannot just hire one single superhero tech vendor to come in, integrate with everything, and magically sprinkle perfect data hygiene over the entire corporation.
Right. Managing enterprise software is never that simple. The survey highlights a massive web of external partners that these companies are forced to manage.
The numbers on this are wild.
On average, these data leaders expect to juggle 7 entirely different vendor partners strictly for data management in 2026 alone.
7.
And on top of that, they expect to use 8 separate vendors for AI management. That is an average of 15 different external vendors being stitched together just to make this whole autonomous system function.
Managing 15 different vendors for one overarching AI pipeline sounds less like a cohesive IT strategy and more like trying to conduct a massive symphony where half the orchestra is playing from a completely different sheet of music.
Wait, isn't the whole selling point of modern enterprise software supposed to be seamless integration? Why do they need 15 different partners? Doesn't that just invite disaster?
In theory, yes, integration is the goal. But in reality, enterprise tech is a landscape of highly specialized walled gardens.
Right.
You might bring in vendor A because they have the absolute best-in-class tool for ingesting unstructured PDF data. But vendor A doesn't do compliance well, so you bring in vendor B to handle the security masking.
I see where this is going.
Vendor C does the vector embeddings. Vendor D hosts the actual foundational large language model. And vendor E provides the specific agentic framework required to trigger an action in vendor F's proprietary supply chain software.
Okay, when you break it down like that, the fragility of the system becomes terrifyingly clear. You are essentially creating a massive chain of custody for every single piece of corporate data.
Exactly. And this introduces a severe scalability paradox. On one hand, bringing in all these specialized vendors is the only way an organization can meet very specific high-level AI goals.
Yeah.
But inherently, this adds massive compounding complexity to the infrastructure. The paradox is that hiring more specialized help to scale faster might actually be the very thing that grinds scalability to a halt. When you have 15 different vendors, you risk creating deeply fragmented workflows.
Because the data has to pass through so many different hands and so many different proprietary APIs.
Exactly.
If those systems don't communicate perfectly, if vendor B misses a decimal point when passing data to vendor E, you introduce completely new, hidden points of failure.
Precisely. And the survey itself explicitly notes that a lack of workflow integration is emerging as a major existential threat to AI success. If the underlying data architecture is a fragmented mess, the autonomous agents built on top of it will inevitably make fragmented, erratic decisions.
So what does this all mean for you listening today? We have covered a massive amount of ground regarding the hidden realities of enterprise AI.
We really have.
If we distill the ultimate lesson from this survey of 600 top corporate data minds, it is this. To survive and thrive as a true agentic business, a business where AI is safely taking autonomous actions to drive real growth trust, has to be the #1 core value.
But crucially, it cannot be blind trust.
No.
It must be a rigorously verified trust backed by highly reliable, clean data and incredibly strong integrated governance for privacy and security.
The era of just playing around with AI novelties is officially over.
Absolutely over.
The enterprises that win this next critical phase of scaling won't necessarily be the ones with the flashiest, most expensive AI models. They will be the ones with the cleanest underlying data architecture and the most educated, skeptical workforce.
Which brings us to your main takeaway today. The real superpower for you going forward in your career isn't just knowing how to write a clever prompt for a large language model.
Right.
Within a year or two, everyone is going to know how to do that. Your unique superpower is going to be your data literacy.
Yeah.
It is the ability to know when that highly confident, beautifully articulate AI is spectacularly wrong. It is the vital skill of being able to look at a sleek generated report and say, wait a minute, let's trace this back. Where exactly did this underlying data come from, and is that source actually reliable?
That level of critical analysis is the exact skill that makes you indispensable in an increasingly automated world.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final, somewhat provocative thought to mull over. Something that builds on the reality of everything we have discussed today.
Okay, let's hear it.
We know 2026 is the year of scaling agentic AI. We know that these enterprise data leaders are juggling an average of 15 different vendors across their fragmented data and AI management systems.
And we know that the everyday workforce has a dangerously high level of blind trust in the outputs of these systems.
Right. So consider this highly plausible scenario. What happens when these autonomous AI agents, which we know are already heavily deployed and operating with agency, start interacting not just with human employees who lack data literacy, but directly with other AI agents built by entirely different vendors?
That is a wild variable to introduce into the mix.
Imagine a massive enterprise organization with a hidden legacy data flaw and a corporate culture of high blind trust. Agent A, built by vendor 1, autonomously pulls flawed data regarding inventory levels. It confidently passes that flawed data to Agent B, built by vendor 2. Agent B accepts the data without question and uses it to trigger an autonomous financial purchasing action with Agent C, built by vendor 3.
Oh boy.
If an organization has a heavily fragmented workflow spread across 15 vendors, who is ultimately accountable when a network of highly confident AI agents cascades a single localized data error across the entire global enterprise ecosystem in a matter of milliseconds?
That is a genuinely terrifying but incredibly real question to ponder. The speed and capability of AI combined with the speed of unverified bad data could be absolutely catastrophic if the governance isn't airtight.
It really could.
And on that slightly chilling but vital note, we are going to wrap up today's deep dive. We hope this look into the hidden realities of enterprise AI adoption gives you a completely new perspective on the autonomous tools you use every day. Keep staying curious, always question your data, and keep seeking out the deeper context in your learning journey. We will catch you next time.